What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Not sure if anybody's here yet. Bit of a pop-up show today, a little bit of a late start. Tried to fire up the show, tried to get it scheduled, and just couldn't get the site to load. A little streaming service site was completely offline. Was not helping me get anything rolling. So I don't know if anybody's going to join us. A couple people might be popping in. Looks like we got a couple popped in. All right, good. Looks the viewers are here. I'm not talking to myself. That's a plus. What's going on, Trey? Good to see you, pal. Thanks for stopping by. We'll do a quick one. This isn't going to be as deep as I initially intended. I was going to do, full solid hour going through all the top picks, the minutes, and all that stuff. Not that we're going to really, spend a ton of time on these shows. The 4 o'clock, 4:30 shows, going through minutes. By now, the minutes are pretty established from the beginning of the day. We kind of know what things are going to look like from game one. We've got some established rotations. I'm just kind of using a lot of that information with some tweaks around the edges, obviously accounting for things like foul trouble, things like, a guy played a couple extra minutes, a guy got a couple minutes in garbage time, taking, there's a couple teams where, a couple guys got in for the last 2 minutes of the game. They just threw in the scrubs for 2 minutes apiece, 4 guys. So taking those guys out, stuff like that. So it's a bit of a slog getting minutes together in the morning. And then everything's kind of normalized right now. Not a lot of changes through the afternoon. I accounted for any line movement. We did have a decent amount of line movement through the day from this morning. So there's different projections than you might have seen this morning. Point here, point there. But we haven't had any massive news drop. The big piece of news that I'm waiting on is the status for Darius Garland. If he doesn't go, Donovan Mitchell takes a big step forward. He jumps to a decent amount more usage. And then we probably see more minutes for like Karis LeVert. We've also got a question mark on Cam Johnson. That's the other one that I'm kind of wondering where that goes, just because they're already a little bit banged up. I think it's Daron Sharp day. We saw how that worked out last year in a couple different instances, and he's super, super cheap on the DK slate. A lot less so on FanDuel. But yeah, I think that's another interesting spot. And then we'll keep an eye on anything else. Let me just actually pull up Twitter here so I can... Whoop. That was my emergency alarm from nap time earlier. Just in case I didn't get back up in time for getting stuff together for lock. Mama says I'm not going to comment on the 9 penalty ending to that showdown slate that took me out of solo first yesterday. Oof, dude. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, best to concentrate on NBA for sure, buddy. That is rough. Steven, what's I see Halliburton questionable, illness questionable for Saturday. So I guess that would mean he's also sick today, as would follow. I hadn't actually spotted that. I appreciate you giving me the Wait a minute. Do I not have him projected? Did I have him out already? Losing my mind. Hang on one second. Bear with me, gang. Nothing like a late start and then immediately jamming on the brakes. Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm looking for him on the wrong team. Yeah, they don't play today. Yeah, that's Hallie's tomorrow. No, that's what you threw me off. I started looking at Sacramento. It's like, wait a minute. It's been a minute since he was over there. Yeah, thanks, Mamba. I was like, hold on. Melted my brain. I'm too tired for that shit, Steven. So since I haven't run any sims yet, and I've been talking about the Ace Mine sims, I haven't told these guys I was going to do this, but I thought it might be interesting to get started by taking a look at our pals over at Ace Mine. This is their interface. Let me clean it up a little bit here. Once you create, you can see up here, there's the dashboard, the simulator. This is dashboard. All right, so I just started this one. So you click in. All right, you're behind the scenes. I preloaded a template with the projections, but it's literally a drag and drop. So we're going to drag right there. Loads up the projections. We're going to click over here. This is where you can add lineups. Same process. You just drag your lineup file over to here. I don't have any lineups built, so we're just going to let it generate lineups and run a sim. But if you had a big pool of lineups, and that's what I'll do later, I'll build out 2,000 or so lineups. I'll take them, I'll drop them in here. It'll zip it up, and it'll include those lineups in this next step, which is creating the sim. You can set a couple tweaks. This is FanDuel. And I have to actually give these guys a note. I usually go like 57.8 for a FanDuel. NBA, we typically want to spend all our salary. We're not really looking to leave a lot on the table. If I'm leaving $400 or $500, $800 on the table, that's fine. I usually take it down this far just to account in a big sim for tons and tons of lineups all around the world that people might be willing to leave more money on the table. You can tell it where you want it, maximum off the optimal. I think it does make sense sometimes to give it a little bit of room, again, to account for people who just make bad lineups. Default player variance gives you an ability to create a standard deviation if you don't have player standard deviations. I use an estimated one that's always worked out fairly well for me. But you can go, whatever number you want here, and it creates the variance for you. Max players per team, so on and so forth. You can create little correlations here. But the overall point is you go there, and then you click the big run simulation button here, which is a key. The first couple times I sat here, and it says waiting for job to begin. And I sat here waiting for the job to begin, not realizing I had to click this big, giant run simulation button that was staring me in the face. So you click that, and assuming I didn't screw anything up in the upload file, we should have a job run. We'll come back to this in a little bit. So that's Ace Mind, and we'll see what the results look like, assuming that runs correctly. If it doesn't run correctly, it's entirely my fault. And I'll just have to fix my upload file. Let me save this guy. Close that. And it's running, by the way. So I didn't screw anything up. Huzzah. All right. This is me sorted to Sacramento looking for Tyrese Halliburton. It really threw me, Steven. Let me make this visible for you guys. Let's kill this. I really got to figure out a good way to make this really completely decently legible. We gotta get DraftKings on there. Probably don't need to give a multi-digit. I realize that most places give these projections, by the way, in single decimal points. My brain just doesn't work with single decimal points. I like 2 decimal points. It makes no difference whatsoever. But 2 decimal points looks correct in my head, and 1 decimal point drives me bananas. So we use 2. Deal with it. All right, let's get into this thing. Going to go position by position. Let me know if you guys like, today's not the right day to go game by game on an 11-gamer. But if in normal circumstances, we can get into a little bit more, game by game, look at the highlight players. It'll be like 3 guys from each team. But I think that it makes more sense to go position by position because then you capture, the keys for each spot. And that's kind of how you build lineups. But let me know. Yeah, Jake, happy Friday back to you. I didn't really, I've been just kind of high paced. Not high paced because I'm just bouncing my way back and forth between these things, but I've just been all business. So let me say hi. Hi, Jake. Hi, Steve. Hi, Trey. Mamba, everybody else who might be out there. Tiz is out there. Cujo's out there. Kevin O's out there. Rob F is out there. And you guys hit anything last couple of days? Anybody using the projections? Are you guys using them as like reference points in addition to stochastic projections? I'm curious. So I've had three straight profitable days, multiple lineups in the top 100 each of the last 2 days, chopped first place the first day. The projections have been really on point, using them with Ace Mind with that simulation tool that I'm running. In the not that I'm running, that the guys from Ace Mind are running, but that I'm running currently right now in the background during this show. It's been pretty powerful so far. So Trey says position by position better. Yeah, I agree. Steven Leibowitz says also as well. Trey uses it a reference with labs. Nice. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Whether you use them or not, it's not going to offend me. Don't worry. But whether you use them directly as, hey, I'm going to pop these in, and these are my projections that go into Fantasy Cruncher or my sim tool or whatever. At the very least, I think it's good to have reference points. I use RG as a reference point. I use a couple other places as reference points from time to time. I check minutes against a couple different places. I think the guys over at Stochastic are still probably doing great stuff. I don't have a subscription over there, but I popped into a couple of the videos over the last couple of days just to hear what those guys are talking about, because there's some really sharp people over there. So yeah, just kind of make get a couple different references, see what you agree with, take opinions from a couple different places. And it's not opinion necessarily, but there is a little bit of injection of opinion around what rotations look like, what minutes look like, until we have a little bit more solidity. And even then, a difference of 2-3 minutes could make a pretty significant difference. A difference of crediting a guy for usage where another site might not credit for a usage uptick by accident makes a big difference. So it's always good to check around. Throwback says, Terry be winning us money. Hey, you make the lineups, buddy. I just put the numbers out there. It's all about making those lineups and selecting the right ones. Let's go by DraftKings positions. We'll do this as best as possible with the clunky cross-site positioning. Looks like a lot more point guard value on the FanDuel board. You know what? Let's do it like we did the other day. Let's go guards and try and capture everybody. I changed my mind again. It's just so much multi-position on both sites, especially at the guard spots. Guard and then the power forward center shares. But let's jump in. It looks like there's a little bit more point per dollar value on the FanDuel slate, or there's just a couple more extremes, actually. Yeah, it's not that there's more, it's just that there's more relative to what's available at the position. Right? You can see a lot of the dark greens in the conditional formatting here versus a lot of yellow, whereas this is more like a lot of like mid yellow up to lightish greens, 5/5s, but seems like a higher curve on the DK side, where FanDuel peaks a little bit more. Just trying to look for a starting point here. Let's start at the top of the board. Luka Doncic, 12-3 on the FanDuel slate, showing an okay point per dollar for that kind of a salary. Played 34 minutes last time out. Monster 65-point fantasy performance. We've got him projected under that, but obviously a clear ceiling well past that. Luka's the guy that you're paying up for. Luka's the guy that you're using the downboard point per dollar plays to get to a guy like Luka. We all know that. When we're talking about the guys at the top of the board, it's important to remember those guys, we don't care as much about this column, the point per dollar column. We do care. It's relevant because if you get a guy like Darren Fox, who, maybe not Luka, but this version of Steph, Trae Young for a lot more, there is no daylight between Trae Young at 43.9 on the FanDuel scale and Darren Fox at 43.4 for a lot less. That's a significant buy. So things like that are obviously key. On the DK slate, those guys are a lot closer, 8,700, 9,200. Trae actually pulls a decent value score at 92 on the DK board. Darren Fox getting out a little bit ahead of him, but it's a lot tighter there. Steph Curry at 93, point guard shooting guard, pulls a decent value, point per dollar value, pushing nearly 50 DraftKings points. Donovan Mitchell, like I mentioned, if we get the game without Darius Garland, I'm giving him 36 minutes, so I'm giving him a pretty full projection already. He played basically 36 last time out, put up 57 FanDuel points. The points, the last time points, by the way, are in the FanDuel scale. This was not on the board last time, just because we had no data to work with. This is minutes played the last game and FanDuel points the last game. If you weren't here for the last game show, this is FanDuel. Points per dollar. DraftKings points per dollar. Price positioning. These are just stats. Fantasy points per minute, usage, true shooting, assist rate, rebounding rate, and then just raw, points, rebounds, assists, 3-point percentage. Going down the board a little bit, Kyrie, LaMelo, perfectly fine plays in a raw scoring sense, but in a points per dollar, a little bit expensive for where they project out. Both of them played, basically LaMelo was limited about 30 minutes going in last time out. I've got him projected for 31 today. It's about what he played, 30.8, put up a 37-point FanDuel game. So in a points per minute sense, he was a little bit below, but basically right around the 1.27 that he put up last year. It's just a minutes thing right now with LaMelo. Assuming we get him at, 34, somewhere around there, and going forward, we'll be perfectly fine. But right now at 9,400, falls a little bit short of the mark. Kyrie at 93, point guard, shooting guard eligibility. Him and Luka just, chop a bunch of fantasy points, a bunch of usage in that offense. I think there's plenty of potential for those guys to go off side by side. But I think Kyrie should be a little cheaper than he is. On the DK board, same story, 9,600, not showing exactly a ton of point per dollar value. Same with LaMelo. He played 30 minutes. 30.8, 31. But yeah, the minutes restriction is about 30. At least last I heard. Trey Schrader again. Schrader, Levert, Strus. Yep, not bad. Levert will see an uptick for sure if we get no Garland. But I like that Mitchell spot. You can get a lot of raw scoring out of Donovan Mitchell either way. But if you get no Garland, this will shoot up a pretty decent amount. You're talking about 7 fantasy points, something like that. So that'll be a big uptick. That's one to watch. Freddie VanVleet for only 7,000 on the FanDuel slate, showing a ton of point per dollar value. Pretty decent projection, 35 minutes. He played 33.5 the last time out. Only put up 22 FanDuel points, kind of a clunker. But it's Fred VanVleet. We've got a lot of track record with Fred VanVleet. He's a 1.09 FanDuel point per minute player last year. On the DraftKings board, a little bit less on the point per dollar. 5.27, still a very good point per dollar score for 7,600 though. Point guard only on both sites. A run of point guard only guys with LaMelo, Freddie VV, Jamal Murray. Murray's another premium talent. Raw point scoring for the money is perfectly fine. He falls into that perfectly fine. Can totally use him across on FanDuel, across on DK for 77. A little bit better in the points per dollar. Definitely looking a little bit more like a play on the DK board, but not a high priority. It's one of those guys you take him where you get him. If he falls in a lineup, you're happy about it. No issues with it. If he's super highly owned or anything like that, you can get away from it easy enough because there's tons and tons of options on an 11-game slate, and there's a lot of guys through here that look kind of the same on the DK board. A lot of good options in the 6 and 7K range at the point guard position. Some of them have shooting guard eligibility, like DeJounte Murray, which point guard shooting guard for 7,500 looks pretty nice on DK. Not bad on FanDuel either, actually. At a 5.1. A lot of sames through here. All these mid-4s in the points per dollar. Similar, but a little bit more highly rated. Points per dollar on the DK slate for all those guys. Talking about the Giddies, the Russ Westbrooks, the Jalen Brunsons, Jordan Clarkson, and Scotty Barneses of the world. Scotty Barnes put up a nice game. 37 minutes, 51 fantasy points. 0.98 FanDuel point per minute player last year for 8,100. He's power forward, small forward on the FanDuel slate. He's point guard shooting, point guard small forward still on the D. Where the fuck did he go? There he is. Yeah, point guard small forward on the DK board still. I love the value with point guard, small forward, just the positional value it creates. Power forward, small forward on the FanDuel slate, it's good, but at 8,100, it's a little bit of a jam up. For 6,900 is a lot better looking on the DK slate. If you get this game again for 8,100, it's fine. But that's not where he's projecting. He's projecting 17 points lower than that. Drew Holiday, I'm just kind of leaning into Tatum keeping his usage and everybody else taking a little bit of a haircut in usage. But we've got a bigger projection on KP, a little bit bigger on Jalen. So it's Drew that's kind of taking the biggest haircut out of that rotation. But all of those guys are strong options in an any given slate sense. All of those guys are strong options in a just raw scoring sense. It becomes about the points per dollar. It becomes about the positioning, the ownership. I think Drew is another perfectly fine, get him where you get him kind of a play. A little bit better on DK at 65, point guard, shooting guard. Gets you up to a 5.0 in the point per dollar. Scoot Henderson, interesting looking option, 5,500. Anthony Simons was downgraded from probable to questionable last I saw. So if you get him out, should just create some more minutes there. He's right here. He wasn't really showing much in the points per dollar sense. 7,200 shooting guard, point guard. Scoot for 55 on the FanDuel slate, 59 on the DK slate, point guard, shooting guard on DK, point guard only on the FanDuel board. Played basically 36 minutes the first time out. He's their high-end rookie, one of the top rookies in the league. Should be out there 30-plus minutes a night. I mean, there's no reason in the world that they're not going to just let him run and let him develop. Did not have a good game the first time out. Don't have the individual stats in front of me, but 16.6 fantasy points in 35 minutes is not exactly good. The kid's supposed to be good. Probable, maybe not blowout, but probable, 10-plus point loss, depending on what your terminology for a blowout is. But Orlando's pretty primed to light up Portland tonight. Smart, Dinwiddie, Ben Simmons, a lot of meh, like through the middle here. And then you get a couple nice value spots. Nothing crazy on the DK side. It's just consistent on DK. Everybody's consistently in like these high fours, mid fours to high fours into the fives. So there are values down here. They just don't pop against the board quite as much. Like Norman Powell down here on FanDuel, 4,400. He's a small forward shooting guard, so we're stealing from a future position. On DK, he's a point guard shooting guard for 49. Shows a good value score here, but it kind of blends in to a lot of these others where he pops a lot more on the FanDuel slate. So Norman Powell will just be, it's not that he's individually more valuable, but slate-wise, he's more valuable on FanDuel. Just comparative to the other guys at the position. Jalen Suggs picking up a little bit of value for 4,600. He played 24 basically minutes last time out. Got him at 26. I think that's pretty reasonable. 4,600 on the DK board, point guard, shooting guard. 5+ in the point per dollar. Kobe White. I realized after the show the other day, remember I was saying he should project decently, but he was projecting too well. I realized I had a 3-point trigger. I just have a few places where I can put like a +3 just to change a thing without worrying about, figuring out usage and all of that. So I had that left on from the night before in that row. So I had to fix that. And that was fixed in projections well before the slate. I realized it right after the show the last time out. IQ played a little bit more than around what he would normally be expected to get. Played 28 minutes. Last year he averaged 28.9. I was worried going into the game that he might take a bit of a bite in the rotation. I still do think it'll be a little bit of a hot hand situation, but DiVincenzo got fewer minutes than I was expecting. IQ got his regular complement of minutes. So that's about where I've got him. I got him at 25. Might pump him up 26 or 26 and a half, somewhere around there to give him a little bit more. Doesn't look great though. 5,700, 24.6. That Knicks team, I'll probably end up with some Randall. I don't know who else I end up getting from the Knicks. Who else did we talked about? Scoot, Markelle Fultz, just a lot of the Orlando guys picking up a little bit of value. Fultz played basically 30 minutes, 24 and a half, paid 25 minutes, basically 25 fantasy points. Got him projected for 30 if we're thinking in terms of about a point per minute with a little bit of ceiling. I think we're all right there. Aloysius, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. hit the like, hit the subscribe. We'll have a more regular when we don't run into technical difficulties before the show and become unable to schedule a show. We'll have more regular content coming out. The projections were up nice and early this morning. Had the projections up like, 9:30? Got them updated after my nap, and now we're here talking about them. Let's move on. We've talked about this is going to get sideways really quickly because all these guys have multi-position eligibility, so we've talked about most of these guys already. Let's see. Donovan Mitchell pops on the board on the FanDuel side at shooting guard only, but we already talked about him. It's pretty similar, shooting guard and when we're sorted to the point guard position, especially on DK. It's the exact same scenario. Most of these guys were just on the board, and everybody, there's a lot of flatness on the DK slate. Like, it takes a nice gentle curve where these guys, these FanDuel guys, have much, much bigger spikes, like Dylan Brooks, because Dylan Brooks only cost $4,500 on FanDuel. Last time out, only 22 FanDuel points in 26 minutes. Got him projected for more minutes today. 6.14. Potential to put up a pretty decent game. Only a 0.8 fantasy point per minute player, but ceiling beyond that. Certainly willing to take his shots. If they fall, you get a better game than that. He was a 30-minute a game guy last year. Might give him a cut to 32, 31. Where is he? See where he's at across town. Bear with me, just pulling up. Like I said, I do like to cross-check. Make sure everybody's on the same page. I think we're all basically doing that. Right there. I got him at 30. I'll probably trim him by a minute or two. But I think it's reasonable to expect, even if he comes down, even if I knock him down to, say 25, it's still a pretty solid point per dollar there. Whoops. And at 0.8 fantasy points per minute, if I take 2 minutes off, that's about all you're going to see change. Guys through the middle here that were not on the point guard board, Jaylen Brown. Like I said, in that Boston offense, I do think that there's reason to expect just the group to, they're going to be great, but they'll probably have a little bit of a limiting effect on one another in terms of the ceiling. A little bit of that with Jaylen last time out, 38 minutes, only 26 fantasy points. Got him projected well beyond that today, showing a pretty decent point per dollar because he only cost $6,900 on the FanDuel slate. Completely different play across town. He's okay. He's a decent mixer. He's a guy with a reasonable enough ceiling. Not a great game environment there, though, with Miami-Boston. One of the lower totals on the slate. One of the more grindy, defensive type situations on the slate. Shooting guard, small forward for $7,900. You can use him, but he's not a high priority on DK. Much higher priority on FanDuel because he only costs $6,900. That's a great price. Just vacuum. You heard last year, Jaylen Brown, $6,900 on FanDuel. That's pretty solid. Mikal Bridges, $8,000, shooting guard, small forward, getting, gonna be the premium guy in that offense most of the year. Projects out perfectly fine on both sites, pushing around a 5 in terms of points per dollar. Plenty of upside there. Usage is gonna run through him. Does a lot of different things on the court, including assists, a little bit of rebounding, a lot of good defensive stats in the stat creator. So I don't mind going to Mikal Bridges. Desmond Bane. Not quite the have to kind of a play that he was the last time out. He's up to 9,000 on the FanDuel board, shooting guard, small forward. Still pulling a 4.49 in it with a 40-point projection. It's a very solid play, but not an absolute smash spot value play. Played 36 minutes, put up 50 fantasy points the last time out. Certainly if he gives you that game again, that's going to be a decent performance. Need a little bit more than that for the money, though, especially on a big slate, 11 games. Like yesterday, we had the Jay Crowder play. Didn't work out to an explosive, 9x kind of a tournament winning play on a normal day. He was, I think, just over 6x on the FanDuel slate, 20 some odd points. But that was kind of key. It didn't become the absolute nuts value play, but it was kind of a key value spot. And it's plays like that on small slates that it doesn't have to go completely nuclear. On an 11-game slate, you do need your value plays to kind of pay off a little bit better. You do need all of your guys to kind of get to that next level of salary multiplier, your 7.5s and so on. Really, really crack through just because there's so many options, so many combinations. Talked about DeJounte Murray. Josh Giddey's just Josh Giddey on both sites, it looks like. Devin Vassell, 4.8 on the FanDuel slate. A little better on the DK board. Vassell, 7,300 on FanDuel, 68 on DK. That's a pretty good point per dollar. Klay Thompson, decent point per dollar. We've all seen Klay completely explode, but last time out, 36 minutes, 27.9 FanDuel points. I gave him 34 tonight. I'm not completely comfortable with the idea of Klay playing 34 every single night. I think he played 33 last night, but another year extended, kind of a broken body. I kind of think he falls into the more, 32, slightly around there kind of a range, but for now, we'll give him 34. Terry Rozier had just, a little over point per minute kind of a game the other day. Perfectly fine. The salaries are not incorrect, 7,400, 7,100, but they're not high priority value marks. Jalen Green, Jordan Clarkson looking a little better on the DK board, 63, 62. Solid fives, 5 and change in terms of the point per dollar. By the way, going forward, if you weren't here the other day, we will have this populated with sim results. So we'll get, I showed it the other day. I've got some columns in there where the boom scorer and the optimal lineup rates and everything from Stochastic used to be. So we'll populate those out with sim ROIs once we get fully up and running with being able to sim stuff early and not have to worry about technical issues with the website and streaming service. Max Strus put up a monster the other day. He played a massive 39 minutes. I've got him at 35 today. I do think there's also the opportunity where he'll just, by virtue of being a body, and especially if he's having another hot shooting night, he'll probably pick up a minute or two if Garland goes out as well. So, 34 is probably the more realistic projection. But I do think padding him a little bit, given some of the unknowns in that rotation right now, probably makes sense. Put up a monster 50 fantasy points in 39 minutes. It's not a great points per minute performance, but you're never going to get that out of Max Strus. What you're going to get is just the raw total for the money. That said, he's up to 6,100 on the FanDuel slate. Not exactly a great point per dollar score. Shooting guard, small forward on the DK board, a little bit more playable for 56. Again, not a high priority for me, but I do think he's got the capability to maybe bend the slate a little bit. Trey says, hope Garland's out because all 3 guards. Yeah. Yeah, it creates a nice little spot there around all 3 of those players. Dennis Schroeder, not great point per dollar on the FanDuel board. Decent projection. Played 32.5 the other day. Put up a better score than what we're projecting him for in 33 today. But overall, 0.78 FanDuel point per minute player last year. For 5,600 on DraftKings, another player who looks slightly better over there for the similar projection. Cole Anthony, another guy in that Orlando rotation who could put up a decent game. 32 fantasy points in 24 minutes the other day, giving him a little bit more time. 32, we've got him at 26. 32 is probably your realistic Cole Anthony ceiling right now. Maybe a little bit beyond that. Obviously, if he has a killer day, we're coasting past that. 1.03 fantasy points per minute last year on 20% usage. We've got him about that, 21% rather. Solid assist rate, 57% true shooting. 36% from 3, but only took 3 a game. I'd like to see that tick up a little bit. Here's Levert. Levert right now just looks like a solid piece of mid value, 5,700. That's perfectly fine in terms of raw scoring for the money, point per dollar. 4,900, already a pretty decent piece of value on the DK slate for 49, especially considering that you can get him shooting guard, small forward over there. 5.36 in terms of these value scores is not insignificant. And especially if you get the Garland out, that would tick up. I've got him at 30 minutes right now. Played 30 basically right on the nose the last time out. Seems reasonable. But you give him 4 or 5 additional minutes, that'll tick up nicely. Talked about Norm Powell. Kevin Huerter, 25-ish minutes. He played almost 30 the last time. Played 23 and a half the last time out. Had kind of a clunker. I still got to get used to this column versus that column. This is last year's minutes per game. This is the last game. .9 fantasy point per minute guy. That's about where he's projected. 25 minutes, 23 and change fantasy points. 5.5 on the DK board, point guard, shooting guard. Not quite as good a value score. For 46 on FanDuel, I'm a little bit interested. Gary Trent, Alec Burks, Jalen Suggs. Again, guys who are kind of who they are. Okay for points per dollar right now. I don't know what the ceilings on these guys really looks like, though. Once you start getting into this range, I don't know how frequently we're getting the big explosion game from these guys that we need to get them into the 30 and change points for this kind of money. These are your realistic numbers, and then you get those outlier performances. 0.86 fantasy points per minute, 0.97 for Suggs. Between the group, Suggs is probably my favorite guy. 4,400 on the FanDuel slate, 4,200 on the DK slate, showing a lot of point per dollar there. Shooting guard, small forward on DK. That's Alec Burks. I'm sorry. Alec Burks showing a 5.56. Suggs is 5.04 for 4,600 point guard, shooting guard. That's why the positioning didn't make sense. Burks played about 25 minutes the last time out. Got him at 23. He's all right. We've all seen the Burks games. Nobody else really exploding through the roof? Anybody crazy relevant that we didn't talk about? Zach LaVine. Just looks okay. Right now, got him at 33 minutes. He played just 25 in the first game. The team basically fell apart after game 1. They had a players-only meeting. Ugly first performance. Zach LaVine only getting 25 minutes. Probably not what we should expect going forward. But for 33, he doesn't project out great. He's okay. This isn't a bad point per dollar score. Same thing on DK. This is not bad, but relative to a lot of these other options, it's not killer. He does probably have a little bit more ceiling than some of the guys around him. But he's not exactly smashing. Jalen Green, not bad here. 6,400 shooting guard, point guard. 0.95 fantasy points per minute last year. Only gave us 13 in the initial game. 30 minutes, though. Got him at 33. Should be a wide open matchup. Houston-San Antonio. Potential for the Boban-Wemby matchup for 2 minutes. Yeah, Trey. The Chicago players only meeting. Yep. Let's see. What are we? If Garland is out, can you run the 3 guards and Mobley? It's OKC. Only ask Hayes 30 minutes and for that price. I missed the Hayes thing. Oh, do you like Killian Hayes at all? He wasn't really popping. Where is he? There he is. Yeah, that's not a bad score. 5+ on the point per dollar on FanDuel for 5K, 4,900. Yeah, not bad. He just kind of blended in as we were looking through the board here. Didn't really jump off the page at me. But yeah, pretty good matchup against a kind of a pushover Charlotte team. Played 30 minutes in the opener. 24 FanDuel points. It's right around where we've got him projected. 30 minutes. I've got him basically for the exact same performance. Right, so a little bit better, like an additional bucket or an additional assist or something. But probably a little bit of upside beyond that. He was a 0.92 FanDuel point per minute player last year. Not a shooter, but a pretty solid assist rate. 10 points a game, but giving you 6 assists. Only shot 28% from 3 last year. Ouch. 45.5% true shooting. He's Killian Hayes, but for the money, that's not terrible. 25-ish point projection. Call the ceiling, 33, somewhere in that neighborhood, you're okay for the money there. You're not crazy good. You're probably putting a cap on the position a little bit, but as a point per dollar play, it's not bad. And then the other question was, would I run all three Cleveland guards if Garland's out plus Mobley? It feels like a lot to put into Cleveland. I typically on a big slate, I'll cap it at 3 players per team. Not as a hard and fast rule, especially for games where there's significant amount of upside, significant amount of Vegas interest. That one feels a little bit beefy to me on a big slate. I'd probably cap that at 3, 2 of the guards and Mobley. Let's take all the forwards together, just since it's all the same anyway. As mentioned, Jason Tatum projects pretty solidly, giving him a full 36 minutes. Played 37 against the Knicks. That entire starting 5 played a ton of minutes. It was closer than expected against the Knicks. Knicks didn't hold up their end in the end of the game, but Tatum had a pretty good day. 58.2 on the FanDuel scale, played nearly 39 minutes. He's 11-2 on FanDuel, doesn't really help his point per dollar. 10-5 on DK, a little bit better looking point per dollar, but there's a lot of better options in terms of what you're paying for. He's more a luxury item, but he's not exactly like a lock-in, smash Luka every time out or every time out. Tatum's a little bit more up and down, not in a bad way. It's kind of reflected in his projection, right? Under 50-point projection, just slightly. Some of these other guys where you're seeing 11s and double digit front parts of their salaries, 5-figure salaries. You want to get that a little bit higher. You want to get that. I know, like I said on the point guard section or on the guard section, it's kind of similar. But Luke is giving me 1.57 fantasy points per minute. Shea's giving me 1.42. Shea's more comparable. Projects out at 50 for 11.4. Tatum's just a slight bit less than in terms of the guys that are priced in this range. At his position, in terms of these guys, he's the clear cut amongst all forwards. He's the highest projected. He's the most expensive. But he's a clear-cut luxury item amongst forwards. And he's got upside, north of 60 points. 1.35 fantasy points per minute, though. So, to illustrate, that's a tenth of a fantasy point per minute lower than SGA. It's 0.3 of a fantasy point per minute lower than Luka. For prices that are not the same, but approaching the same. Julius Randle, much, much better value option. Going up against Atlanta, 35 minutes. He played 34 the first time out. We know that they're going to ride him pretty aggressively. 8,400 on DK. Looks like a great value on the DK board. Power forward and center. Tons of options at the big man positions again on DK. Triple J right below him. 7,400 power forward center. Put those guys together. That's a pretty good starting point for a DK lineup in terms of your big men. Those are 2 strong point per dollar plays for guys who have easy upside to 50-plus fantasy points. Both played around 35 minutes. 34 for Randall last time out. 36 basically for Triple J. I've got Triple J projected at 33.5. Looks pretty solid. Obviously, that shorthanded Memphis team. You right down there, Joker? Yakking on a bone. That shorthanded Memphis team just creates situations for these guys. But Triple J, as long as he's out there getting his minutes, staying out of foul trouble, always has upside to a monster performance. Jimmy Butler's Jimmy Butler. Again, I don't love that Miami-Boston game environment. But he's fine. He's a guy to take. You take him where you get him. No issues with going to Jimmy for 98 on FanDuel. 85 on DK, he looks better. Solid point per dollar option on DK. 46.5 fantasy points the last time out on the FanDuel scale. 34.5 minutes. Got him projected right around the same. No issues going to Jimmy. I just think, and especially on DK, I do think he looks pretty decent over there. But still not crazy high priority. Just because there are other guys that I like a little bit better. There are other guys who project out fairly similarly at the same positions. And there are better game environments than a Miami-Boston game. Pascal Siakam kind of an also ran on both sites. KP, a good projection, had a very good game the last time out. 38 minutes. I did not see him playing 38 minutes. I thought they'd have him in the 31, 32 range. Kind of a fragile guy, as we talked about on the last show. Super critical for that team. If he goes down, that's going to be problematic for that team. Mama said, I don't think Tatum is up and down. I think he just plays better competition than Luka. Luka doesn't make his team better, and Tatum does, so that's the only variance for me. Yeah, I'm just talking purely in terms of fantasy points. And it's not none of that was to say that Jason Tatum isn't a spectacular basketball player. He absolutely is. The fantasy point performance is what I'm talking about, though, and most specifically, it's not even an up and down. It's just the frequency of the slate bending ceiling for the money type games is what I'm talking about. The 1.35 versus the 1.6 whatever it was fantasy points per minute is really the key factor there, and especially once you get up into the similar type salaries. Tatum's a little aggressively priced on FanDuel. Aaron Gordon, just since I clicked on him, had a massive share of him on the first day. He was in my tied with a bunch of people tournament winning lineup. Looks terrific again today for me. Put up 39.9. Not a crazy performance. It was a 2-game slate, but it was good enough. He was not owned at all, and he was very cheap, and he's pretty cheap again. For what Aaron Gordon does, 6,500, a pretty focal point in that offense in terms of a good rebounder, a really underrated assist man for a big man, a decent scorer, high motor, highly active, plays a fair amount of minutes. 35 last time out. I've got him at 34. For 65, that looks great. For 6,000, it looks even better on DK. Power forward only on both sites. Tons and tons of value in Aaron Gordon. I like that spot quite a bit. Klay Thompson touched on before, but again on the FanDuel board for 62, pulling a decent amount of value. Shooting guard and small forward on DK, not bad in terms of the points per dollar. I just don't love the minutes. Keldon, not looking great. Looks just kind of like a guy who falls into some lineups. Not somebody to prioritize on FanDuel. Little bit better on DK for 6,900, but not high priority. 1.01 FanDuel points per minute last year, 1.05 DK points per minute. RJ, 63. He's all right. He's RJ Barrett. He'll have a few decent games. I like the player. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's still developing. I think he's still got a little bit of ceiling to go. But I think we're realistic. 36 minutes is always on the table in a Tibbs offense. He's going to be one of the kids who's out there getting tons of run every single night. But last year, 0.87 fantasy points per minute, 0.91 on the DK scale. He's 6,400 on DK, small forward and power forward, so he gives you a little bit more value over there. But he's RJ Barrett. He's fine. This is about, fantasy-wise. This is realistic. 27 to 30 points on the FanDuel scale any given night. And then your upside outliers in the 45 to 50 point range. Not much beyond that. MPJ for the money. Pretty good looking on DK. 6,900 on FanDuel. I don't like it all that much. I prefer Aaron Gordon. 5,800 on DK. I can get behind that a little bit more. Small forward and power forward. 5.5 on the point per dollar scale. Not a bad option there. And then you get some good options down board here. Some pretty solid options here. Again, just because none of these guys are dark green, all of these guys are showing solid point per dollar value numbers. So there's a good swath right through here on the DK slate in this. What is it? MPJ, Jeremy Grant, Andrew Wiggins, Franz Wagner, Jalen Williams, Jabari Smith, and then down to Dylan Brooks on the FanDuel slate. And on DK. I know we're mixing some positions here. It's just impossible to do this. Maybe we should start going team by team because it is really silly with the multi-position and the differentiated multi-position from site to site. Like Jabari, power forward, tons of value on the FanDuel slate, 33 minutes. Played just 26 the first time out. Where do they have him across town? Let me check that minute projection. I checked all of these earlier after I did them. I check them multiple times a day. Anytime I update the projections, I make sure we're not crazy out of line. Let me just see. Yeah, they got him actually a little bit higher. So yeah, that's looking like a strong option. 0.85 FanDuel points per minute last year. Solid piece of value on the DK slate as well, 5,300. And again, that game environment should be fairly open. More guys hiding down board because there's just so many people on this slate. Like you go all the way down here to get to Harrison Barnes, who put up a 42.8 monster in the first game. Up to 5,900, not really showing a ton of projected value. 57 on the DK slate, same story. Not a ton of value coming through in terms of the projections. But he does have the ability to put up a game here and there. Just not giving you the right score for the price. Lou Dort carrying a decent projection. Decent amount of run, multi-position eligible. 0.82 fantasy points per minute guy, though. Once we get into this range, I'll look at the point per dollar column, but I also want to keep an eye on the just points per minute over here. This is FanDuel scale, point per minute over here. But like a THT doesn't project great in terms of the points per dollar. 28 minutes, only played 22 the first game, but a 1.07 FanDuel point per minute performer last year. Compared to like guys around him, 0.7s, 0.8s. That keeps me a little bit interested in the THT option. Similar with Kevin Love. Played an unexpected 28 minutes the last time out. I've got him shorter than that, but for only 4,700, I can throw some darts at a Kevin Love play. A guy like that, I don't really mind the game environment as much because I don't need Kevin Love to do all that much more than just be out there in a grindy kind of a game doing grindy Kevin Love kind of things. So I don't really mind that one. It's not a high priority play. It's not one I'll get to like crazy. A little bit more high priority at 4,300 power forward and center on the DK slate. That's not a bad downboard extreme value option. Jalen Johnson had a surprising game. Played 30 minutes, 41.5 fantasy points. Got a projected for 25 today. Not exactly crushing. Just a mixer on the FanDuel slate. A little better again on DK. 4,700 at power forward on DK. Not bad. 4,200 for, who's this? That's Burks. We just talked about Burks. Looks like a decent piece of value across sites. Anybody else down board? Nobody crazy down the board? Zaire Williams, a decent minutes projection, but nothing in terms of fantasy points. Played 30 minutes the last time, or 29 minutes, 12 fantasy points. It was a 0.68 fantasy point per minute player last year. I don't think we get caught up in that trap just because of the minutes. And it's the same with a lot of these guys. Once you get down this far and you get into these 0.6s, your upside, your ceiling, your necessary score for success becomes a lot more difficult to attain with these guys that are down board. Yeah, that might be a good idea. Mom is saying go through guard center, then forward, filters out the process, and then just talk about any other value players out there. Might be a good idea to do it that way. We're figuring things out. Like I said the other day, it's a lot easier with the way I had this set up to just bounce around and answer people's questions rather than have to like talk it through. Wemby, probably going to be more popular than he deserves to be. Foul trouble the first game, only played 23.5 minutes. I've got him at 29. I think they probably keep him around a 30 minute rather number. Maybe he creeps up to 32 as time goes on. He'll have his monster days. He projects out all right, 5.15. It's not like he's bad, but there's other guys that I like better. There's other priorities here that I like a little bit better. I'll have some, but given where I expect him to land popularity-wise, I probably will be a little bit behind the field. 8,100 on DK doesn't look as good. The $7,500 price on FanDuel is good. It came down $200 from the other day. So with that in mind, power forward and center eligible, maybe I'll get to a little bit more, but it'll be a factor of how highly owned he is. Paolo Banchero falls into that perfectly playable. Not flashing a ton of point per minute, not flashing a monster upside or a monster projection, but has very, very good upside, 34-minute projection. Totally solid. Bridges we talked about. Kawhi's Kawhi. Siakam. Larry Markkinen. Power forward, small forward, 83. Not bad. 1.18 FanDuel points per minute last year. Not as good on DK for 9. At 83, you can get to him on FanDuel. Again, another guy who's not crushing the point per minute, but not bad. Playable is who he is type of a guy. At 91, he's overpriced on DK. Or, excuse me, at 9,000. He's overpriced by a little bit on DK. He's playable, but when you're getting him 4.5 in terms of the points per dollar, when you've got a lot of these guys up top looking a little bit better, and then a lot of good value guys who are not all that far off in terms of the projection, I don't know how much we need to prioritize Larry Markkinen over there. DeRozan in that messy Chicago rotation is DeRozan. He'll have a couple games where he goes off, but he'll typically settle in around his 35-ish fantasy point average. We talk Levine, we talk Scotty Barnes, Mobley, a reasonable option. 34-minute projection, played about that last time out. Will be pretty limited the amount of times that Evan Mobley goes out, plays almost 34 minutes, and gives you only 25 fantasy points. 1.05 fantasy points per minute. Solid option. For 73 on the DK slate, that's a pretty solid piece of value at the power forward and center spot. Again, not smashing through the value slate, but upside and a fairly significant amount of upside. I don't mind that play. Let's jump over to center, and then we'll pull up the Ace Mind Sim. We'll take a look at what came up for FanDuel. We don't have time to run a separate DK one, but we'll do that in the future. At the center spot, Jokic, top of the board on both sites in terms of projection, clearing everybody by about 13 fantasy points on both sites. He's your luxury item, obviously. The big ticket on the entire slate, him and Luka. But I tend to land on Jokic a little bit more frequently when that happens. I do like some of the value plays, though, at center. And when I say value, I'm including, comparative value. I'm including guys like, Jaren Jackson at 82. Certainly down the board, you can justify like Kevon Looney for only 5,400. It's just carrying a projection of half of what the projection for Jokic is. Looney needs a ceiling day. And then you got to get your other plays right that you're getting to with your, roughly 7,000 in savings. Got to get that spread correct. There's reason to believe that you can get away from Jokic today, but I think he's a very high priority item. At 11.6 on the DK board, I think he's almost a must. Showing a pretty strong point per dollar comparative to everybody on the slate. The ability to put some of these cheapo other centers in there at the util spot gives you additional value. You've got this gigantic swath of guys through here that are all same, very good point per dollar values. 30-point type projection, and that's Mark Williams, who I like quite a bit. Zach Collins, who's drawing a very good point per dollar on both sites for 5,700 in that San Antonio offense. DeAndre Ayton, who's not bad, and only projected for 28 minutes. Kevon Looney, Xavier Tillman, who had a good first game, put up almost 50 FanDuel points in 33 minutes. Walker Kessler with his outrageous upside. A little bit better on the FanDuel slate because of the block points and everything, but a decent option on both sides, points per dollar. Jalen Duren, Jakob Poeltl, Clint Capella even. A 27-minute projection for Clint Capella. He only cost 6,100 on the FanDuel slate, 5,900 on the DK slate. He put up 31 FanDuel points in 28 minutes. A little bit of upside beyond that. 1.18 FanDuel point per minute player last year. So there's a lot of decent value guys through here on both sites, really. Şengün, not a bad source of value. 7,400 on FanDuel, 77,000 on DK, 5.3. I haven't even mentioned Day'Ron Sharpe. I mentioned him at the top of the show. This is a 25-minute projection. He played 12 the first game, put up 9.4, but should be stepping into, what's his face is out? Claxton is out. So he should be stepping into minutes. We saw him do this last year and play like 28 minutes and put up a couple monsters, if I'm remembering correctly, as just the backup fill-in nominal big man. He's not even that big. .6'11", 265. He's big, but I mean, he's not. He's bigger than I thought. But yeah, 3,300 if you get any kind of minutes out of him. And we'll keep an eye on it. Look for him to land in the starting lineup would obviously be key. That would be huge news. But I think it's fairly reasonable to expect him to get a decent share of minutes. Let's see where he's in the latest update across town. Yep, RG's got him in about the same spot I do in terms of the minutes. So that's obviously, it's a monster piece of value. It's also a little bit of a wild card because we don't have any kind of confirmation that he's getting 25. Again, only got 12 in the opener, but that was with Claxton mostly out there. Mitch, looks like Mitch projects out fine. Another guy who will pick up value on any given FanDuel slate on the back of some blocks. 4,900 on DK, perfectly fine mix-in option, but just falls shorter than a lot of these guys who cost the same and are putting up a little bit more in terms of projection. And you get the Kevin Loves, the Rocos, the Plumleys, the Derek Liveleys of the world who all project out just like meh kind of options. 20 and change minutes, sub 5 in terms of the point per dollar going down the board on these guys. Anybody popping more on DK? A little bit more on DK. Kevin Love we talked about at 4,300. That's playable, not great. Lively, just hard no. 6,400. Yikes. Wow. Is that the worst point per dollar on the entire slate? No. Robert Williams, because he's only carrying a 20-minute projection. With a guy with a 24-minute plus projection, that's got to be. No. Zubac. 3.9. 3.95, rather. 3.96. 28 minutes for Zubac. 7,200. Don't love it. 0.97 FanDuel points per minute last year. Gave us 44.4 in 25 minutes in the opener. He's got that ability. But he's never going to project for this kind of performance. A little bit difficult to justify it on any given slate. It looks a little bit better for 6,100 on the DK board versus 72 on FanDuel, but not a priority, I don't think, on either site. I think you're prioritizing Jokic at the top. You can absolutely get to some Sabonis. Randall. Triple J looks very good. Randall looks pretty good on both sides. You can get both of these guys at power forward, by the way. But if you're not going to Jokic, I'd probably try and get Randall or Jackson, or skip down, probably bypass some of these guys. As good as Pascal Siakam, Kristaps Porzingis, Bam Adebayo, Vuk, Wemby, Şengün, Mobley. As good as those guys are, and several of them you can still use at the power forward spot, I would probably drop down to this range or all the way to Day'Ron if I wasn't going either Joker or these two. I think that's the way to play the center spot on DK. FanDuel, obviously, you get your mix of guys who have the power forward eligibility to help spread things out a little bit. Randall, power forward only, so he's out of the center conversation. Same thing with Siakam. And then some of these other guys get into both. But I think a lot of that just lends to I'm really prioritizing getting to Jokic shares here. I'll have some Triple J in the center spot for sure. I'll have some Looney. I'll probably have some Day'Ron. It's a little bit less of a priority to create a big spread today at the center spot on FanDuel, though, I think. I think you do want to get to a reasonable spread of these value guys. And again, you can use these guys in your util spot, which is kind of key because they're all center only. So that entire spread of guys right here all have a little bit of value, all center only, all reasonable value-based alternatives. Not score-based alternatives, obviously, but value-based alternatives to pivot to. So I think you create a little bit of spread through here. Say you take 30, 40% of your lineups, put them through here, maybe give some of them to these two guys. Another 20% to include like these two guys, and then the balance to Joker, and then scattershot plays on some of the high-end guys. You don't want to freeze out your Siakam, Porzingis, Adebayo shares. You want to get to some. But lost my train of thought. Beantown, does Brogdon slide into Simon's spot or Sharp? Hadn't really thought that through. Did we get him out? Did we get him confirmed out? I know he downgraded from probable to questionable. I would say any kind of uptick would probably come from Brogdon just based on where we've got Sharp already. 29 minutes. Your significant change in terms of the projections would probably come on Brogdon. They're given... Did we get Simons confirmed out? I'm just seeing they do have him pulled across over at RG. Oh, 4 to 6 weeks out. Well, that's certainly confirmed. So we went from probable to questionable to out for 4 to 6 weeks. In terms of in the last 2 hours. All right. So Scoot's obviously going to get all the work that Scoot can handle. I would say that we'll definitely see an uptick for Brogdon. Couple more minutes for Sharp, for sure. And then who downboard? Murray? He's not on here. I'm trying to think of who's in the other file and on this team. This is what, 9 guys? I think next man up would probably be Murray, but he'll probably only slot in for 12 minutes. If that, I can't do that math that quickly. Yeah, your priority guys, though, the guys to be concerned with certainly are going to be Sharp, Brogdon. I don't know that I'm going to give Scoot any kind of a... I might see what his usage is. But I'm obviously not giving him more than 35 minutes. So, yeah, keep an eye on the site. That one will get updated very shortly. We're coming up on 5:45 already. Jeez. Lab slid Sharp into the opto. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like I said, he's already at 29 here, so just give him 34. I would say. Let me see, Mama. Let me open the... I'll just open the projections file back up. Hold on. Let me find it. My desktop is driving me bananas moving these files around. Yeah, Walker played 6 minutes last time out. I didn't project him today. They had him earlier this morning. They had him for 4 minutes across town. They had Murray for 3 minutes. Each of those guys probably will grab a couple now in this next update. I don't know exactly how I'll chop it up. But yeah, that's a good call, Mamba. He'll probably pick up some minutes. Considering that he played a little bit the other day. So yeah, just keep an eye out. But the priority changes there will probably fall to the obvious guys. Good call though. Thanks for pointing that out. Saves me Googling after the show. So whoops. Just keep that open for now. I know you guys couldn't see the projection file. Nobody wanted to see my face that big. Oh, look how clear that looks now, though. Maybe this. Not clear. It's clear when it's really, really small. Anyway. So let's get off of this. I think that wraps up most of our position-by-position priorities. Top overall point per dollar guys on FanDuel. Some Brooks, some Looney, some Dayron. Obviously, just value plays there. Little Aaron Gordon love. I'll definitely be going back to that. Triple J, your first like star-ish kind of guy up there. Freddie Van Vliet. Scoot. Especially if this ticks up a little, that's actually not so bad. Obviously, we can't deal with this kind of a performance. But if the kid's what he's supposed to be, that's an interesting spot. DK, it's going to be Dayron at the top. Oh, Nicky Smith not coming up on DK. I got to fix his name, I guess. Nick Smith Jr. Totally irrelevant. So yeah, Dayron up at the top, assuming we're getting that reasonable shot at like 24, 25 minutes. Gordon, again, another, just solid points per dollar. Similar. Zach Collins, Kevon Looney, Jaren Jackson. Kevin Love pops a little bit over there. Doesn't have to do a ton to pay off 4.3. Kessler, Pirtle, Williams. A lot of value guys. This is that whole pool of center values, right? These are those guys that we were talking about that were in that cross-section of value centers. Jalen Duren. Onyeka Okongwu is on that board. I don't know that I go to Okongwu here. I don't really expect a ton. Yeah, a lot of point per dollar values available on both sites. We get the sim ROIs in here, the more important stuff, the top 1 percentages, the win probability percentages. To show you guys what that'll look like, let's jump back over to Ace Mine real quick. And then we will wrap things up because I got to actually start simming the ones that are going to go into the contests. That's this one. All right, job completed. That's what we wanted to see. All right, so this is what our results look like. See if I can give you guys a little bit more view there. Well, you don't get to see the centers. Can I do like this? I get you. Nah. I was hoping to get the centers on the screen there, but it won't give me that. Anyway, you can download the entire pool of lineups. So this created, what it did was it goes in and it tries to replicate the entire pool. So it creates 79,365 lineups. And then when it creates this summary file, it just gives you the unique lineups. So if I click this, which I won't do now because it'll probably kill the stream or whatever. If I click this to download all the lineups, it would pop me up a CSV file, an Excel file, and it would have, let's call it like 35,000 lineups or 32,000 lineups, whatever was unique from the pool. And it'll give me all the data for the lineups, which includes, as we scroll over, it includes your information about like what's in more relevant for other sports like football. This is hyper relevant. It'll tell you whether if it was one that you uploaded, it would say Opto here. So you can sort between ones that the sim tool created for you and ones that you created and then dumped in there. So you can see how the lineups that you created compared to the lineups that were the quote unquote field lineups. And then you can make your selections from a pool of both, which is how I've kind of been doing it. Obviously crazy important. things like average cash won, ROI, win probabilities, top 1% probabilities, cash probability, which, certainly is important, but one that I care about a little bit less. We're shooting for the top. We want to win. So we're looking at these win probabilities, the ROIs, the cash won columns. And basically, I'm sorting by these. You can move them back and forth. You can take lineups directly out of here when you export it. You can export just your lineups and just get your top 100. You can export just the top 150. You can export just your lineups. This would be a different tab if I had uploaded lineups. You click over to here and it shows just your lineups with all the results. Powerful stuff. Gives you quite a bit. Player data. You can get individualized information. So this is some of what I'll start putting up on the tool there. Julius Randle, top ROI player on FanDuel right now. Not at all owned. Projected ownership coming from RG from earlier in the day. Kevon Looney, Aaron Gordon, a couple of the guys we talked about there. Showing pretty monster ROIs. Steph Curry, Bridges. A lot of guys we like in there. Once you get into the top 1%ers, you see a lot of the more, the chalk, a lot of the more obvious names. A lot of the guys that were popping. But you lose a little bit in terms of, you can see the, the top 1% versus the ROI because these guys are so much more highly owned. So your ROI is your differentiation plays to some extent. High value guys, high point per dollar guys at lower ownership, lower, not low total necessarily. Some guys very low owned. Other guys a little bit mid, but like Kevon Looney, just based on his extreme point per dollar potential and positioning on FanDuel, even with ownership, becomes a high ROI guy and a high top 1% guy. Win probability, same thing. You get into your more chalky plays, your more obvious guys. Yeah, Mamba, I like the spot for my guy Julius. He's a guy, I just get to Julius Randle quite a bit. I like what he does on the court. He's another one of those guys. Anytime I can get a big man, a center, power forward type, who can also shoot, who can also facilitate, your Aaron Gordons, your Randles, your Sabonis's, guys like that. And Randle's an underrated passer. I like guys like that quite a bit. Guys who can stuff a stat sheet. Give me those guys for DFS, especially when they're super low owned. So I like that spot. Underdog says Garland very questionable today. Is that a new category of injury in the NBA? We've now got probable, questionable, doubtful, very questionable. Yeah, it's starting to feel like Garland isn't going to be out there, Steven. I'm with you. I appreciate the note, bud. So yeah, I recommend AceMind if you're looking for a good sim tool. I've been succeeding with it so far. They've got product. I am in no way affiliated with these guys monetarily. I just like the two of them, and I think they made a hell of a good product. They've got it up for NFL, DraftKings and FanDuel, Classic and Showdown. Same story for NBA. Got DK and FanDuel, Classic and Showdown. Solid tool. The thing I like best, and I talked about this for football especially, where I'm looking to build tons and tons of lineups. You can just jam simulation after simulation and just build a massive pool of lineups significantly faster than with... does it still have the... I guess I can't see the time that it took. This runs in like 2 minutes to create again, 30,000 entries. For the FanDuel NFL slate, I'll create a couple million entries because I can create several 100,000 in 2 minutes. So just as a tool to create lineups, just a raw lineup creator, it's fantastic. And the fact that you get it with all that data, the simulation, the ROI, killer. Oh, so questionable, says Steven. Imagine trying to shoot over a literal mountain with KP on every shot. I mean, he's tall compared to NBA players. Yeah, KP's a beanpole. That's for sure. He's no Wemby. That's for sure. But yeah, KP is like, Wemby is like KP, like 4.0. They say he's like 2.0. He's like 4.0, but, that tall beanpole type guy, he's going to do things that KP never dreamed of, I think, on the court. But I like KP overall, as a talent. I reject him for leaving New York, like I was saying yesterday. But I like him as a talent. Yeah, Wemby's it's just so exciting. He's going to have some crazy fantasy games. He's going to have a lot of clunkers, but he's going to have some crazy, crazy fantasy games. Steve, it's acemind.io. I'll drop the link into the chat right now. So that's the data that will start to populate into the tools. I'll try and get some of it incorporated up on the site in terms of the ROI numbers and all that stuff. And hopefully we'll arm you guys with even better info going forward. But coming up on an hour till the slate starts, so I'm going to go build some lineups, you guys. Randall's going to feel like he's wide open out there. Yeah, it's just hopefully they start going down. But Julius, that's the other thing I like about Julius. Certainly not afraid to take a three. So, pile that on top of his facilitation and everything else that he does well, just the 3-point shooting. So if those threes are going down especially, could be a solid day. Anywho, guys, I'm going to punch out. I'm going to go build some lineups. I'm not sure what we're going to do as far as football. Probably not going to hop back on tonight. I was thinking about doing that earlier. But then just with things going a little haywire and still needing to build lineups and not having done anything with NFL other than just putting up the projections, I might punt the Friday show and just do the marathon Saturday. We'll definitely do something tomorrow. Keep your subscription, subscribe, keep your notifications on just in case we get to 7:30 and I'm like, hit a burst of energy and decide to do an NFL show. But probably not. Probably just going to sit here and watch my basketball lineups. So with that in mind, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for sure. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. And yeah, that's it. I said it the wrong way around. I'll see you tomorrow.